thank you very much for your time today. Thanks very much for joining me to hear a little bit more about implementing our world, in the classroom. It's kind of it's always slightly sort of difficult to know what's going to work best for this kind of thing. But I've tried to sort of base everything that I'm going to be talking about today on what's been specifically requested, and a few other things that I think that might be useful for you. But again, as I mentioned a moment ago, there will be plenty of time for questions at the end if you feel like I've not covered anything and there's not as much detail as you would maybe like. But yeah, I mean, good afternoon and welcome to the second CLPL session about the Our World Filmmaking, Language Learning and Global Citizenship project run by the Scottish European Educational Trust, or SEAT, about running our world in your classroom. So, thanks a lot for joining me today. Okay, so I'll just kind of run through what my basic kind of plan for the day is. I'm first of all going to talk about, run through what was requested by, through the registration forms for the project, through, various sort of direct emails that I've received, or just, as I said, just things that I think would be useful. We're going to talk about why do we storyboard? What is a storyboard? And importantly, what is a storyboard not as well? We're going to be looking. I'm going to give you some, storyboarding tips. We're going to talk a bit about shot sequences. I'll explain to you about the templates that we provide. Which we would like entries to be, to make use of the templates. Although it's also totally up to you if you would like to. If you'd like to sort of, do your own thing with it and use your own kind of template, that's absolutely fine as well. But I'll show you what our sort of recommended resources. We'll also have a look at the camera shot directory, which I have emailed to everyone earlier today. It's also available on our website, and I've also put it in the sort of chat for this team as well. We'll look at some basic kind of camera shots and framing techniques, which should, I hope, really help when it comes to making the storyboards. It's just important that the young people are kind of aware of these and have thought about these in some way. And it's also just good fun as well. I think the learning about different camera shots and framing techniques is always, the pupils always find it very enjoyable, and it's a fun thing to learn about as a group. We're also going to look at a Post-it note exercise, which is something which I think works really, really well when it comes to developing storyboards with young people. In fact, with anyone. I'm going to talk to you about keeping your ideas, keeping the pupils' ideas as simple and as sort of straightforward as possible. I think that's a really, really important part of when it comes to sort of to short film making, is making it, achievable as possible. Well, I'll also talk a little bit about supporting the kind of creative process in the classroom. I'll give you some example resources and activities that you can run with your pupils, and tell you a bit more about what is actually available on the workshop day. I'll briefly touch on the theme, which is the Sustainable Development Goals, and my ideas and some resources from our partner organizations, which I think could be really, really helpful for you. And then, as I said, there'll be a bit of time for some questions at the end as well. Okay. So from the registration forms, the groups, people that have joined us today have specifically asked for things like basic screen education support to be provided today. We'll talk about how to storyboard, why do we storyboard, how to teach storyboarding so that pupils can, use that skill and do it themselves. Would I just be able to ask just to make sure everyone's got their microphones off, just so that no one's getting any feedback or anything like that, and everyone can hear quite clearly. Thanks a lot. How to teach storyboarding so that pupils can do it themselves. How to make the procedure of storyboarding more effective and fun was asked about, and also some ideas on how to guide pupils through the kind of creative process. So hopefully all of these will be covered over the next sort of 40 minutes or so. Okay, so why do we storyboard? Well, firstly, storyboarding allows us to visualize a story. So this is really helpful for the whole filmmaking team, as it helps with planning for the actual filming day, for the workshop day, and it ensures that it can help to ensure that time and battery and the device that you're using, whether it's an iPad or whatever, making sure that the battery isn't wasted and that the whole operation is as kind of streamlined and efficient as it can be. Um, it's really important to keep the storyboard as flexible as possible in the early stages, allowing the group to continue to kind of brainstorm and to move things around until they've found the most kind of effective order for their shots. A good way to keep things flexible is by using Post-it notes, but I'll talk to you a bit about a kind of a really useful exercise that you can use in a couple of minutes. So storyboards are also useful for creating shot sequences. So, in other words, why does shot B follow shot A in order to tell a story? So, in my opinion, and generally the best storyboards show and don't tell, and what we mean by that is someone that's not had anything to do with the creative process or heard anything about the film should be able to look at the storyboard and understand what's going on purely just by looking at it. Um, Importantly, as well, I think again, kind of in pursuit of sort of efficiency on the workshop day, storyboards should indicate to the filmmaking team, what the camera will be doing in each individual shot. Which angle and framing or camera framing is required or desired, and how long each shot will last. I've sent over the camera shot directory to you all again in an email earlier. Um, and we'll look at these in a little bit more detail in just a second. But these are just there to help you and the pupils with this element of the storyboarding. So the camera shot directory I hope will be a really useful resource for the young people in our world this year. So let's think about what a storyboard is and is not. We've kind of talked about what it is, but let's think a bit more about what it's not. So it's a very common thing in schools to see pupils put together storyboards, which are kind of they're often just a series of pictures of the camera in what you call long shot, kind of similar to the example you can see on the screen just now. It's it's sort of missing any information really about the language of the camera, which camera angle the team want to use, or which type of shot they want to use, how long they want it to last, etc. um I will say here that I don't mean to kind of get to make this sort of sound kind of too off-putting or to get too kind of bogged down in all these different elements of the storyboarding process. But I think that just as long as there's been some kind of consideration of the language of the camera, then that's really the key thing for what we're looking for this year. So it's basically just, as we just said, not just a series of kind of the drawings of the camera of the characters in the long shot. That's not to say that we've not had some great Our World entries, that have come to us with storyboards not, massively dissimilar to this one, but we're just trying to encourage pupils to really sort of envision themselves making the film on the workshop day, and what will help them the most, and what will clearly show it, something that will clearly show us what they have in store, what they have planned for the workshop day. Because the workshop day, it ends up, it's a very, very condensed period of time. It's not long in order to get everything filmed and put together. So I think, pursuing maximum efficiency is definitely a good move. This is just a kind of a wee side note here, really. Often we get pupils, slightly worried about the quality of their drawing. I also teach geography as well as working for SEAT, and I often find that pupils get kind of put off from like drawing diagrams or from taking part in kind of more creative tasks because they feel that they can't draw and they don't like doing stuff that they feel that they're not good at. And I always say so, like I'm not expecting, Picasso or Vincent van Gogh, it's just a simple recreation or a sketch is absolutely fine. And that extends to storyboarding as well. This just drawing that I've put up on the slide here it's quite effective at expressing what the filmmaker is kind of looking for from the shot in terms of the framing and where the camera is going to be placed and the kind of style of shot, despite the fairly sort of rudimentary drawing, really. Okay, so obviously, we're always encouraging pupils to put in as much effort as they can and to add color and to pursue a high quality of work, of course. But artistic talent or perceived artistic talent anyway should definitely not be a deterrent to those wanting to create storyboards. Okay, so an effective storyboard or sort of film narrative, which meets that idea of showing, not telling, which we discussed a couple of slides ago, are created generally by designing shots in a kind of sequence that follows a system of sort of active questioning. So in other words, like each shot sets up or asks a question, which is then at least partially answered in the following shot. And this generally, we hope that this keeps the audience kind of on board and interested in the narrative. So let's have a look bit of let's have a look at an example. So in these sort of three shots below, you kind of got the question and answer. In shot one, it says, you might be thinking, where's the dog going? Why is the dog running away? Where's it going? Whose dog is he? And then by shot two, you're thinking, okay, you've worked out, okay, he's bringing someone a letter. I wonder who it is that he's bringing the letter to. You can see the letter in the hand there. And then by shot three, you realize, okay, it's the dog's owner. And now you're wondering, okay, what's in the letter? So and so on, and this continues. So I think, yeah, thinking of it as a kind of system of active questioning is a really, really effective way of thinking about it. This is a bit of a kind of aside just now, but there's a quite a well-known idea in sort of filmmaking and sort of storytelling more generally called Chekhov's gun theory, which basically talks about the importance of everything in the story meaning something and contributing to the narrative in some way and being kind of necessary to the story as a whole, so you're not wasting any space. So Chekhov's gun theory states that if you say in the first chapter that there's a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter, the rifle absolutely must go off, which I think is just a really interesting and eye-opening way of thinking about it. Okay, so I mentioned before about how useful how useful Post-it notes can be when it comes to creating storyboards. This is a really useful method because it allows pupils to move their shots around and to find out what works best for their story before committing it to the kind of the final storyboard page. It allows them to focus more on the impact of the shot and the camera rather than simply just the progression of the story. It allows them to get rid of maybe unnecessary shots that aren't adding anything. Again, thinking back to Chekhov's gun theory, which we were just talking about a second ago. I think a useful tip when it comes to creating using Post-it notes is to kind of color code each shot by sort of location or by setting. I'll discuss keeping the story nice and simple in a moment, but let's say there's like two place settings in the film, one indoors and one outdoors. Having two different colors of Post-it notes can be really, really useful just for, again, for kind of efficiency and shooting all the outdoor scenes together at the same point. For example, if you know that all the blue Post-it notes are shot outside, then it means that even if they're not in sequential order necessarily. You know, it just maximizes that kind of streamlined thing that we're looking for. You know, once again, these can be really simple drawings on the storyboard and on the post-it notes, and they can be labeled as well. But I think using these sort of sticky notes is more of a sort of planning device in the kind of really early stages, rather than, you know, what you might sort of hand in as a final storyboard. But I think it's just another really good way of organizing people's thinking and trimming the fat, if you will. Okay, so we've got several kind of specific resources made for the Our World project, put together by our filmmakers, Tim and Alistair, which cover topics like storyboarding and, you know, developing story narrative. I'm going to show you just a kind of there's a trimmed down version of one of these tutorials. There's a couple of other exercises which Tim talks about in the full length video, which is again on our website and on YouTube as well. And I'll make sure that people receive you know, URL links to them, just so that yeah, so that you can access them later. But I'll just show you this video quickly, and then just to give you a kind of example of what we've got available.
We'll now move on to an exercise where you will learn how to storyboard to create emotional impact. So the first thing you need to do is create a very short story, or use the following suggestion. You will need to get some actors, or in this case some animated models, to perform the story, and you will need to observe carefully details of the performance. Then you'll have to think about where to place the camera and how to frame the shots so that you tell the story with emotional impact. And then you can create the storyboard. So here's the little simple story that we're going to create a storyboard for. Well, it starts out as a suspense film and ends up as a love story. But how are we going to storyboard it? We can create storyboards using drawings or photographs. For this exercise, we're going to use photographs. We saw in the previous tutorial how most storyboards in schools look like this, just a sequence of long shots with the camera far away and no cuts. So, how could we change this? How could we use different camera placements, different framings to really bring about some emotional impact? At this stage, you don't really need to worry about what the shot is called. You just need to place the camera, frame the shot, and think about why you are doing that. What do you want to show the audience? What do you want to tell them? And what sort of emotion do you want them to feel or see on the screen? So now you've got your story, find yourself a phone or a camera, some Lego models, or if you're lucky, some actors, and work together to find out the best placement for the camera and the actors and the framing of the shot to really tell the emotional story that is in front of you. What can you show the audience to enable them to feel what the actors are feeling? The suspense, the trepidation, the relief, the enjoyment. So I hope you've enjoyed this filmmaking tutorial. If you're interested in more, please explore the SEET website.
Okay, so I think that's a really great resource put together by Tim there. And as I said, that's a kind of trimmed down version. So there's an extended version with a couple of other exercises available on our website. We've also got, you know, for example, Tim also provides another one, another storyboarding practice exercise using a Danny McCaskill cycling video from YouTube, and gets the viewer to kind of create a storyboard alongside him. And then one of our other colleagues, our other filmmaker, Alistair, talks to us about developing story narrative and using second languages in film as well. So yeah, so definitely check those out if you get the opportunity. And I think that yourself and the pupils will get a huge amount from them. Okay, so briefly then, a few we kind of take home tips for Our World when it comes to narrative writing. I would recommend highly that the stories are kept really simple. So, one or two main characters and place settings. Um, Pupils, as I mentioned a moment ago, only have a few hours on the workshop day to shoot everything, to shoot all their scenes. So, simplicity is definitely the way to go. I would only go with more, place settings if if it can really be justified in the story. And often imaginations run a bit wild, and you end up with 6 or 7 different locations in a 3-minute film, and it's kind of hard to keep on top of it all. So we recommend keeping the time setting short, or potentially even just in real time, just to avoid overcomplicating. By that token, it's generally felt, I think, that a short film has you know a good short film has a pretty simple storyline. Often there's an opening which establishes character and or setting. We have a problem which is faced by the main character. We then have development of the problem, which adds, some detail, tension, or maybe a kind of complication. And then there's a sort of climax where there's some kind of confrontation or revelation, and then we normally finish with some sort of resolution to that problem. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do this necessarily, but this is just a kind of general tip. So I emailed you all earlier our camera shot directory, and it's also in the team here, and available on our website as well. So a big thanks to Screen Scotland for their help in putting this together. So we've highlighted a few of the most common camera angles and framing techniques which are used in different films. Obviously, with all this stuff, there's not a right or wrong way to do it. We're just highlighting, a couple of ideas that you might want to incorporate. So it's a kind of double-sided document. So if we focus in on the framing techniques, you can see we've got in the top left got an extreme long shot, which is often abbreviated to ELS for film storyboards, which are often used to establish location at the beginning of the film, or maybe emphasize isolation in some way. So this example is taken from Star Wars, and it lets the viewer know, where Darth Vader is, that he is alone, and let's face it, he's probably plotting something kind of evil. And then we have long shot, or LS on storyboards. This example is taken from Harry Potter, which is often used to highlight, background and the onlookers in the scene, potentially to show scale or, busyness within the scene. Whilst also keeping the sort of main subject in plain sight. If we got to medium shot then, or MS, this example is from the Bourne Legacy. So medium shots are often really effective for dialogue scenes, which I know that pupils make a lot of use of generally in our world. Full shots, or FS, this one's from Django Unchained, it's often used to highlight costume or show, maybe multiple characters in the scene at once. And then we've got a close-up, or CU, taken from The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, which is really effective for kind of like revealing reactions, or showing some sort of like emotion or intensity within the scene. And then finally, we also have an extreme close-up, or ECU, this one's from X-Men, which really puts the kind of emphasis on the smaller details, and draws attention to the importance or the kind of intensity of what a character is saying or feeling. And that's kind of a sort of summary of what I've just said. And then if we move on to common camera angles then. So here we've got an eye level angle. This one's taken from Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which is often used to kind of mimic how we see things in real life, or to maybe make the viewer feel like they're in the scene, they're involved in the scene with the actors. We've also got a high angle shot, which this is taken from Matilda, which is often used to kind of show some sort of vulnerability or some power dynamic at play, or as if the main character maybe has an uphill struggle ahead of them. The kind of flip side, the same is sort of true for a low angle shot, which can be shown, which can show a character to be, kind of large and intimidating. We can see in this low angle shot example, we've got there's a clear sort of power dynamic at play here between the boy and the Nazi commander at the concentration camp. From the same film, we also have a bird's eye shot, which can be used to show sort of scale and movement, or like there's a sort of greater being's eyes looking down on the scene below. Then we have a worm's eye shot used to highlight what's going on the ground. And finally here, we have a Dutch angle or a tilted angle shot, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, pupils have a lot of fun with, which is often used to kind of disorientate the viewer in some way, or, as if the characters are kind of ill or drunk or something like that. It can also show that something is wrong, or something's going wrong in the scene, or something's a bit confused, and it can add to the kind of dramatic tension really, really well as well. Again, we've got slides and exercises to do with these camera angles, which you can use with your pupils. Again, available for free on our website. And that's a sort of summary of that. So we also have slides, not similar to this, that sort of run through all the different basic camera shots that we've talked about in the directory, which you can run through with your pupils, or I can as well as part of the online school visits, which you can sign up for by emailing me directly, and we can work out a time that works best for Teams or Google Meet to speak with your pupils that are taking part this year. Okay, so this is the blank storyboard template, which I emailed to everybody earlier. This is a slight sort of upgrade from what we've used in previous years. We're asking for a little bit more information this year. So I should just thank St. Luke's High School, who last year kind of made their own template that looked not dissimilar to this. And I just thought when I received them, there was some absolutely brilliant one. They ran our world with their whole S3 year group, and we received some fantastic storyboards from them. And they had kind of broken it down like this, and I thought that was just a really, really clever idea. So I have stolen their idea, but this is available for download on our website as well. It doesn't have to come like this. We've received some really interesting storyboards in the past that have gone totally off piste and been much more creative with the way they've put their storyboard together. We've had like 3D ones and things like that from groups, but that's absolutely fine as well. But this is our kind of recommended resource for that. So let's talk a bit more about the kind of SDGs, or we'll introduce the sort of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, aka the SDGs, or the kind of global goals as well, some people call them, and think about some ways in which we can sort of introduce these to our pupils, because I think they can be quite kind of daunting at first, because there's so many of them, 17 of them, and they're so sort of broad. They cover, basically all aspects of life, really. So yeah, let's have a bit of a closer look. So the 17 goals strive to make the world a better and more peaceful and more prosperous place. They cover lots of walks of life, such as tackling poverty and hunger, climate change action, reducing inequalities, and gender equality, just to name, just a few of them. The aim is for these goals to be implemented, or progress to be made towards reaching these goals by the year 2030. And different milestones are obviously used to show each country's respective progress towards each goal. Okay, so I've got one eye on the clock, so I don't want to keep you here for too long, but this part should only hopefully take a moment. So as with everything I've mentioned today, again, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but I think due to the breadth of the 17 goals, it's often useful to spend a period in class kind of looking through the 17 goals and seeing which ones produce the best conversations amongst the group. Um, as with all sort of real life topics and sort of teaching more generally, I think making each goal as relatable as possible is really, really important. Um, it's often useful for the purposes of choosing, one to make a film about in our world, to encourage a discussion about all 17 and then goals and then getting the pupils to focus on which one jumps out most to them, or to go with the one which encourages the most passionate discussion. So, there's different ways we can do this. We can rank the goals in terms of significance or interest to them. We can provide a kind of related stimulus to encourage discussion, such as, a photo, a map, a graph, a YouTube clip, maybe a quote from someone significant who pupils may have heard of, like Greta Thunberg, or I know Leonardo DiCaprio has spoken a lot publicly about climate change, or even someone like Donald Trump, who certainly, let's just say, he certainly promotes conversation, and certainly promotes impassioned viewpoints, I would say. But yeah, that's another way that we can kind of get people to think a little bit about the goals. So I want to let you know about the teaching resources of our kind of colleagues at Scott sorry, who specialize in global citizenship education, but they focus quite specifically on SDGs through a lot of their resources. So it also has a lot of other sources where you can find useful learning and teaching resources and teaching ideas. But if you go to this page, scottdeck.org.uk/resources, we have a whole page on our website as well, seat.org.uk/resources as well. And that kind of links to a lot of our colleagues and partners, useful resources there as well. But Scott Deck one specifically is very, very good. For example, this one, explore the global goals, 17 activities for secondary schools, which has some really, really great ideas which you can run with your classes. And it has a sort of a little, maybe 3 or 4 slides per goal. And it gives you some activities that you can run with your classes based on each individual goal. They also have a great resource in their modern languages section called Issue to Action Modern Languages. But again, on the scottdeck.org.uk/resources webpage, you can have a browse yourself and see what jumps out to you. They focus on lots of different specific subject areas as well. So this is one of their examples from the 17 activities for secondary schools. So just taking one that we receive a lot of storyboards based around this goal, reduced inequalities, goal 10. So this is their resource relating to that one. So they start off by giving you 10 sort of true or false statements, obviously that prompts some discussion in the class, such as the 85 richest people in the world have as much wealth as the poorest half of all humanity, 3.5 billion people. And the pupils say whether they think they're true or false. And then it kind of moves into a more sort of discussion-based activity where you're invited to share your thoughts about what inequality means to them. So, whether that's in 250 words or less of prose, through images and captions, or maybe in a poem as well. And they also give you some activities that you can think about, over the next few days or the next week or so. Identify something that represents inequality in your local area. It could be something that you see on your journey to and from school. Describe the inequality and its impact, and how could we solve it? And then they give you some examples, things like bushes and hedges growing over the pavement, which could hamper the progress of the visually impaired. So just various examples like that, but these are just really, I think, really creative, really great activities that you can run with your pupils. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have a page compiled of external resources, put together by our, partner organizations and our colleagues. I got the URL wrong earlier. It's seat.org.uk/our-world-resources. But this is taken from kind of across the internet, but you're welcome to have a browse of that as well. So in addition to kind of other, learning and teaching resources that we have available on our website, that I've, just recently, just a moment ago, provided a bit of a kind of overview of, we've also put together some other ways that you can help pupils, come up with some film ideas. Again, of course, again, these are just ideas, and there are, multiple, countless ways that people's creativity can be kind of supported. But you can do things like write a 100-word story, which can then be turned into the film. Maybe you could provide a short title as a sort of stimulus that may present many ideas, the discovery, the chase, the robbery, the murder, the battle, the assassin, etc. You can maybe provide your pupils with an opening line. What did you do? Something's wrong, or well, that was certainly unexpected. Just to kind of get the pupils thinking. You can also maybe provide an object or a concept like shoes, a clock, rain, an empty house, prayer, or courage. Again, we've had some support from Screen Scotland in putting some of these ideas together. So they've got some great ideas on their website as well. We can also establish a kind of emotion, then figuring out what caused it, or what might happen next. So he was so angry, he just wanted to hit something, but knew he couldn't. She was very confused and she needed the teacher, but the teacher wasn't paying attention. These are just some ways that you can establish and bring an emotion into the film kind of early on. As well as, there's also, you can also use things like existing texts and characters as a kind of, again, as a sort of, as a stimulus. They can be a really good starting point for the development of new ideas because the groundwork's kind of already there for you to build on. There's a plot, there's established characters, relationships, themes, all of which can be kind of explored in, in greater depth or from maybe a different angle to kind of create something new. Like, the kind of classic example, musicals like West Side Story, for example, are obviously based on like Romeo and Juliet. And Baz Luhrmann, took the exact play. We were mentioning Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann film, 1996 film earlier. And he basically, Baz Luhrmann took the exact play and just, he relocated it in modern day America. So, and that's a really, a really good way of getting the ideas running. So yeah, we've talked about existing characters. I mean, in terms of artwork and photographs, allowing inspiration to come from a piece of art or a photograph can be a really, really excellent starting point. You can maybe hand out a selection of pictures to the class and get them to answer, questions like what are the first words that come into your head looking at the picture? How does it make you feel? Who's the most important person in the picture? What are they looking at? What are they doing? What are they thinking? What's happening in this scene, etc., etc. Poetry as well. They can be a great basis for a short film, or to at least get people thinking. Because due to the length, they're obviously they're generally quite short, but also profound. So a story can be told in a few minutes on screen, based off a poem, or they can simply just be kind of audio visual, explorations of a symbol or an emotion. And again, there's some examples on our website of different poems that you can use as a stimulus. Okay, so let's just make it clear what is available to pupils on the day of the filmmaking workshop, just so that there's kind of no confusion. So Pupils will have a brand new iPad, 2023 model, to use on the workshop day. They will have iMovie uploaded to the iPads for editing. Although some pupils have used things like CapCut in previous years as well. You know, there will also be, as we mentioned in the last CPD session, there's also a professional filmmaker, an editor there on the day to provide tuition and about editing with tablets and just to kind of support the process in general. All any sort of props and costumes that the kids want to include will need to be brought with them to the workshop space. And pupils will also have access to the whole space where the workshop happens, and will have the chance to shoot outside as well, as long as they're accompanied by an adult when they head outside. That's kind of more, you know, all the more reason to keep the setting really simple. You know, the workshops we run usually take place in either kind of office buildings or university buildings, just depending on the location and who's signed up to take part. We really like participants to be as sort of resourceful and creative as possible. And we really do encourage kind of experimentation. But as we mentioned previously, their lives are made a lot easier if the settings are nice and simple. There's also a green screen available on the day as well, which we've had some brilliant films over the last few years making use of the green screen, but that's another option for pupils as well. Okay, so just some final tips just before I let you, well, I open the floor to some questions. And I realize it's been quite sort of this quite relatively sort of fast paced, so I imagine there might be a few questions at the end. That's absolutely fine. So I would say try using Post-it notes for storyboarding. I think that's a really good tip. Maybe try practicing storyboarding with the class with, you know, the exercises from Tim's videos, which again are on our website. Just maybe before doing the final storyboard. It's just, again, it's a really fun activity that people seem to really enjoy. Make sure to indicate the language of the camera in the storyboard. So, you know, camera movement, shot type, shot duration, etc. As well as thinking about, you know, language of the camera, make sure pupils plan the second language element of their film before coming to the workshop. So this is a great opportunity for sort of interdisciplinary learning to come in, but please do make sure that side is planned. So because that bit can often, you know, take a bit of time getting the translations and getting everything on that side of things sorted. So if we're trying to sort that on the workshop day as well as filming, it's always a bit of a push. Obviously, color and neatness are less important than the ideas when it comes to storyboarding. And you know, someone who hasn't been involved in the conversation should be able to figure out what, you know, how the film's going to look without any very limited explanation. Please also remember the resources that pupils will have available to them on the day, just so that they don't go too over the top and too much outside the box, and just keep it nice and simple. So again, it's just my contact details. I've sort of been in contact via email with you all. So you should all have my email address. But I will also be putting this this session that's been recorded. It will be put up on YouTube on youtube.com/@seat_Scotland. That will be put up, you know, by the end of the day tomorrow. And these are also our social media handles @seat_Scotland for Twitter and facebook.com/seatscotland for Facebook. You can also give me a phone on 01315579886 if there's anything you'd like to speak with in person. But I think the next steps will be, if you would like to sign up for online school visit, will be yes, contact me directly and we'll get something in the diary so I can work, you know, with you and also with your pupils as well. Okay, well, I'll now open the floor for any questions. But thank you very much for listening and for joining me today. just I'll open the floor. So if anyone has anything they would like to ask, you're welcome to put it into the chat box, or just unmute yourselves and ask away. I'll stay on. Geraldine's got a question. Yes, Geraldine.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for that information. I'm just wondering, you said about St. Luke's High School doing it with a whole year group. Would you recommend that, or would you say it's just as good doing it with a smaller group of pupils that have come forward, putting their names forward?
Yeah, great question. I would, to be honest, I think they both can. We've had very successful examples from both sort of formats. It worked. That's the first time we've had a whole year group. You know, I think they had about, I think it was 5 classes. You know, in languages, and that's the first time we've worked with that scale at one time. But it worked really, really well. I was able to run sort of school visits with the whole year group. We had kind of made a team, and all the teachers were able to sort of tune in at once. And we've received, I mean, of course, there's always going to be, you know, varying levels of engagement and you know, I suppose quality of output as well. But I think that was yeah, it went well for a first experience with that. We've also, on the flip side of that, we've also had some brilliant storyboards coming to us from, you know, groups that are maybe an after school or a lunchtime film club, where they've made their storyboards in groups of, you know, there's maybe just 3 pupils that are taking part, and that's, you know, that always works really well as well. So it sort of depends on if the appetite for it is there amongst the pupils, and also the teachers in the department as well, if they want to participate in some way. But it certainly worked very, very well last year with St. Luke's. Yeah. Sorry, that was a slightly rambling answer, and I hope I've managed to answer your question there, Geraldine. But okay. But yeah, so in terms of running it with a large group, the way that would work, I'll maybe tell you a wee bit about the format of that then. So I think we had 3 sessions with St. Luke's as a full year group. We had a kind of very introductory one at the beginning, and then the following week we went into more sort of talking about camera angles, and then the third one we talked specifically about storyboarding. We ran through some of the activities which I've mentioned today, you know, with Tim's sort of practicing storyboarding activities. And it was kind of a matter of me running through the information at the beginning via Teams, and then, you know, setting the pupils' activities for the following session, which the teachers in the department could then continue with at their own, you know, whether it was straight after I hung up, or, you know, just later in the week, and that seemed to work very well. There has also been some examples of me kind of going into schools and working directly with the pupils, which I'm happy to do for people that are, you know, schools that are relatively. I'm based in Glasgow, so, you know, I'm happy to come to as many schools as I can in person as well. But it's worked really well for us the last couple of years since the pandemic, you know, doing it online, just because it means we can just reach a much wider sort of geographical group of schools. But, you know, in some cases, if there's a real desire for me to come into the school building, then I'm more than happy to discuss that as well.
No, that's a really good answer. I was just thinking about, because we've asked kids to sign up, so probably about 45 names, and I was
Fantastic.
wondering about time-wise, but I suppose between lunchtimes and after school and a variety of things, that'll work.
Yeah, I mean, if it is working with the whole year group, if there's I'm assuming that there would be a period, or maybe it might be split over two. Some schools kind of split the year in half. But if all the pupils are at, you know, at their class at the same time, you know, we can, you know, maybe they might all be at their languages class at the same time. We can coordinate that quite effectively and quite easily. Yeah, that's fine. And also, you know, even if it's after school clubs or lunch clubs, I'd be more happy to meet directly with the pupils that are interested, again, through Teams, you know, on the lunch. Just for example, we've worked the last couple of years with quite a few Highland schools, like Thurso High School and Dornoch Academy. And it was really useful being able you know, to meet with them on Teams, you know, during their lunch break. And, you know, it was a relatively small group from those schools, but being able to meet with them, you know, online worked really, really well. Yeah, so I'll wait around for another few minutes. So if there's any other questions, then you're more than welcome. But otherwise, thank you very much again for your time, and yeah, and I'm always available on alex@seat.org.uk if you have any other questions that come up. You're more than welcome to email me.